This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I am your host, Erica Lance. With me today, as my co-host, who's probably not going to behave well no matter what I try to do, is Valerie Willis.
Never.
And our guest today is James S. Peet. Woo! Welcome,
Woo!
James.
Woo!
Howdy, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm totally stoked to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. So let's talk about what we're drinking. So I am drinking in our new Drinking with Authors swag. James, you'll get some of this for being on the show. I can use my words. I am drinking, watch this, Val, this is how you say it, San Pellegrino. Yes, San Pellegrino, that's how you say it.
I never can say it right.
I
sorry.
know.
It's just, I'm always going to hash every name, anything that
you
is not
should hear what she calls this. It's
pronounced
hysterical.
the way it's spelled, forget it.
So this is called Momenti, and it's pomegranate and blackcurrant. And I mixed it with gin, botanical gin, and it's pretty freaking amazing. Okay, Val, what are you drinking?
I'm still recovering from that whole champagne instance a few episodes back, so I'm just simply doing sweet tea today.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute! I got out all this booze.
Oh, you
and you're drinking
don't want
sweet
her
tea?
on. You don't want her on champagne. If you listen to that episode, it was a shit show because apparently she's never drunk champagne before. Had two glasses and was under the table in like 10 minutes. It was terrible.
Yeah, I'm a lightweight. It gets, and I get rowdy, and then I interrupt. I'm the interrupting cow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm used to interrupting and being interrupted, so.
Well, James,
I have
what are you drinking on this podcast?
Well, as I mentioned, I just got back from skiing at a little place called Crystal Mountain Resort here in Washington State. And so I'm trying to hydrate. So first off, I actually have a plethora of beverages on my desk here. I am drinking Coors Edge because it's non-alcoholic. And, well, I don't need to get hammered at 2 in the afternoon, our time. And I have, of course, my obligatory REI bottle filled with water because Pacific Northwest REI. Let's see. But my first drink of choice is Lafroig out of Scotland.
Ooh.
So, and this is the 10-year Scotch. So I like to show that. And of course, I'm drinking it in a Maker's Mark glass because I won the Maker's Mark in an auction or something like that. And I don't really like Maker's Mark because it's not Scotch. So,
I don't like it.
And to top it all off,
it's not Scotch. Scotch.
Ed, I'm finally doing the sparkling ice, 0 calories, and, well, I don't do sugar, so I have to drink something. So I have this plethora of beverages here, and I'm sure I'll be drinking throughout the entire time. Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Johnny Walker. Like I said, I came prepared.
Silly with my gin and my San Pellegrino now. I'm like, do I need to go up and get some bottles? I can do that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so for the audience at large here who may or may not know your work, what do you write?
I write amazing work. Actually, it's okay. I write in the multiverse, or actually on parallel worlds. Let's see, the best way to describe it is imagine that you could open up a portal to a parallel Earth, and there are no other people there, and it's all yours. What would you do? And so that's what most of my series is. I have 4 books out right now, 3 in what I call the Core of Discovery trilogy, and 1 in the Chronicles of Hayek trilogy, with number 2 on the way for that, and number 4 on the way for the other one. So you want to ask a question.
When did you start writing?
I published my first novel in 2017. But it was an idea that I've had for a long time. I mean, I was not one of those kids who wanted to write or wrote all the time or doodled in their notebook or anything like that. I was more of the active type. Let's go camping. Let's go fishing. Let's go shooting. Let's go do something. that doesn't involve sitting down other than reading.
Mm.
So I wasn't one of those kids who wrote for pleasure, even though I was on the school newspaper, and one of my first jobs was as a cub reporter for UPI, covering the 8th Asian Games in Bangkok when I was a high school student there.
Wow.
But several years ago, as I would take the dogs for walks, I would just think about things. And because I read a lot of Heinlein and H.B. Piper and S.M. Sterling,
Mm-hmm.
Harry Turtledove, all these guys who write, I just came up with this concept about what if there was like this couple that was in this organization that explored parallel worlds, and they had to crash land and they had to come back. But to make it really interesting, I would have them come back to their location using the same route that the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery expedition used.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that's the term, Corps of Discovery. And it's about these, young adults who join an organization, the Corps of Discovery, to explore these parallel Earths, to open them up for settlement for other people. And so our protagonist names are Bill Clark and Meriwether Lewis, or Mary Lewis, as she's known.
Oh, very
So-
cool. I like that.
It's a cool concept.
Yeah, she is. My kids like Mary. They just say about Bill, Dad, all you did was write a fan fiction about yourself. And it's like, well, no.
You're
Hey,
allowed to do that.
you're allowed
I don't
to.
think I've ever heard
Yeah.
I wrote a fan fiction about myself. It's awesome.
Well, that's what my kids write fan fiction all the time, and they're just like, they could be crap about it. So, I mean, yeah, our main protagonist is, medium height with brown hair and green eyes, but, oh, wait.
I was
A
going to
medium
say,
height.
they may be right. It might be right. I'm not sure
Yeah.
whose side I'm on right now. So you didn't think about writing before and you started this journey. How long from when you started writing till getting published? How long did that take you?
That I would say a couple of years, and well, just the thinking process took several years. Mind you, I was thinking about it while I'm walking my dogs 4 miles a day and all that fun stuff. And then finally, I was actually diagnosed with cancer, and at the time they gave me 18 months to live, and I said, I don't think so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. This has been 10 years now. So
Well done on not falling
Well
into
done.
that you're going to die in 5 minutes theory, apparently.
Yeah, well, it was really hilarious is that my urologist, it's prostate cancer, when he told me about it, he was just like, well, the only good news I have for you is it's not in the bones yet. And I said, I'm going to get a second opinion. And so I did. And I went up to Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, see the greatest oncologist in the world type thing, and it was sort of like, well, doctor says you're going to die. I mean, they literally said, yeah, don't even bother with that treatment because you're at quality of life stage. And I went, yeah, no, I don't think so. And so I went through an entire metamorphosis on diet. So where before I was a true meat and potatoes, I love my, Big Mac kind of guy. Now I'm pretty much vegan almost, and as my wife says, I am a reluctant vegan. So I've changed my entire diet. And my PSA is practically 0, where before it was 254. And if you know anything about PSA scores, anything above 4 is cause for concern. Anything above 20 is in holy shit territory. And I was as my physician wife said, I only had one person who had one even close to that, and they're dead. So,
Oh, wow.
I think, so we're following kind of a vegan diet. I do eat some meat, vegetables, some types of meats, fish and duck and, dark meat, but no red meat, no sugar, no fun. So,
Well, you're on this
prompted
side of
me
the
to actually
living,
write.
though, so there's
You're
give
right.
Yeah.
and take.
You're a
on that.
survivor.
So that's what actually caused me to sit down and start considering writing. So I probably started writing in 2015, I want to say. The diagnosis was 2013. I've been busy with all sorts of other stuff, preparing for the CPA exam, which I never took because why bother if you're going to die, and things like that. And then I tried to, not knowing anything about the publishing industry, all I knew was, oh, you write the book, you get it to a publisher who will, either vet it and say yes or, throw it on a scrap heap. More usually they're throwing it on the scrap heap. And so I went to the Willamette Writers Conference with my first it wasn't my first draft, actually. It was my completed novel. And a couple of them expressed interest, but then they all said no. And then I learned about self-publishing while I was at the conference, and I was like, well, that's interesting. Wait a minute. You mean I control the production, I control the marketing, and I control the profits? I like that. And so I'm a control freak, and what can I say? 70% of of $15.99 is, or whatever, is a lot better than 10%. So I jumped all over the self-publishing bandwagon. And it was kind of funny, is my first book was actually half of the story that I had in mind. I was planning on writing the whole thing, but when I got to over 126,000 words, I was like, geez, I'm only halfway through.
Yeah.
And there was no way I was going to cut it down. So I said, okay, looks like I'm making it into a sequel.
Oh,
So
wow.
I went ahead and I self-published. Yeah, so I went ahead and I self-published the first one while I was writing the second one. And so I finished the second one, and I already had ideas for a third one and fourth and fifth. So I've actually been working on those, and I got the third one out. And it's rather interesting is that they're either you hate my work or you love it. It's
That's the truth.
I don't.
About any book, I think, is finding the audience, right? And then not every book is meant for every reader either, and vice versa.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I have friends who publish books in crime and mystery and everything like that, and I'm just like, I don't like that stuff. I was a cop in real life. That stuff is. But you were going to say.
I was gonna mention, because you talked a little bit before we went on air. So you were a police officer previously?
Among many things, yes.
I was gonna say, so let's go down a little bit of a list here, because you've had kind of an adventurous journey, right? So where do we begin? And then we get to author. So let's do our jumps here. Here we go.
Okay, here we go. Condensed version of James Peet's bio. I was born. I'm alive. Actually, I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, although, I've never really been there other than when my dad died to go to Johns Hopkins while he died. But my dad joined the government, and so we got to travel around the world on government dime for the first 18 years of my life. And so I got to live in Panama, Germany, Liberia, Laos, and Thailand.
Wow.
And living in Panama, of course, we were there during a civil war. And living in Laos, we were there during a civil war. So I'm kind of used to civil wars. I don't recommend them, though. And so let's see, I first came to the U.S. really to live when I was 12 years old, and we moved into a small town of Culpeper, Virginia, which was the quintessential Southern town at the time, with the "you ain't from around here, are you, boy?" mentality. I mean, it really was. They, the statue, the Confederate soldier facing away from the North, the whole thing. I mean, even to the point where people would provide me with KKK literature in the school.
Oh,
not the teachers. It was just the kind of crap that went on in the 70s in the South. And it was nothing I could understand, because I grew up in Africa and Asia and South America. People are people. We all have hopes and dreams and aspirations. And the only reason you shouldn't like somebody isn't because of their color, but because they're an asshole. So
That's very true.
So anyhow, 4 years in Culpeper, I couldn't wait to get out, and we moved to Thailand. And that's a funny story, is my dad actually had the opportunity to get a posting to Australia, but because I was in the middle of the 10th grade year, he didn't want to pull me out of the 10th grade to move to Australia, and I blew a gasket. I'm like, do you know how much I hate this place? So instead we wound up going to Bangkok, Thailand, and you have to understand is that when I was living in Laos, going to the American School of Vientiane, the International School Bangkok were our arch enemies. And now I'm going to ISB. And I had the time of my life. I loved it. I fell in with a pretty good group. Matter of fact, I'm still friends with them to this day. One of them just borrowed my van, and it broke down on him in Salt Lake City, and I feel really bad. But so I graduated high school. They gave me a one-way ticket back to the U.S., and because I'd grown up in the tropics, I was like, okay, well, where can I go in the U.S.? Hawaii is out because that's expensive. So South Florida it was, and I wound up in Fort Lauderdale. or as we called it back then, Fort Lickerdale, because of all the spring break stuff. And unlike the COVID
It's
20
still
and the
true.
freshman
So-
20, yeah, you've heard of the freshman 20, like the COVID 20 we've all put on. Well, my freshman 20 was actually the anti-freshman 20, or the freshman anti-20. I didn't have enough money to eat or anything like that, so I lost 20 pounds my first year of college, but got an Army scholarship. So transferred to the University of Miami, and where I was doing pretty good until my dad got cancer and died, and then my grades tanked, and I lost my scholarship. And with 2 classes left to graduate, I dropped out of college.
Wow.
So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, it's kind of bizarre. And what I became was a park ranger with the National Park Service, doing the whole seasonal and temporary stuff. I went through the National Park Service Seasonal Law Enforcement Training Academy in Santa Rosa, California, so I became certified to be a National Park Service law enforcement ranger, which I loved. And I was offered a full-time position, and I was stupid, and I said, I need more experience. What was I thinking? Okay,
Oh
here's the
my
tip, folks.
goodness.
Anybody offered a job with the NPS, do not think. Just say yes. Go.
Yeah.
It is the greatest job I ever gave up. I mean, I regret it to this day. You know, but life is like that. You have lots of regrets. You make stupid decisions, and you live with them, and you move on. So for a short time, I worked at the Smithsonian Institute while I was looking for full-time employment as a police officer, because one of the parks I had worked at, my manager was like, you're more into law enforcement than you are education, so maybe you should be a real cop. And so I became a cop in Alexandria, Virginia, and I lasted about 3 years. It is not a job for the easy, faint of heart, or those who are timid. And, well, I was not timid. If anything, I'm a little aggressive at times. But, yeah, I realized it wasn't for me. I got that book, What Color's Your Parachute? And I determined that what I wanted to do was teach, which is kind of funny considering my previous supervisor had said you're more of an enforcer than an educator.
Oh, wow.
And the really, but I don't like kids. So if you don't like kids, where do you teach?
Well,
College, technical schools.
I was going to say technical
Exactly.
schools?
Yeah.
Well, me thinking, oh, well, I guess university. So that requires getting a PhD.
No.
So, but one of the funny things about that is I remember my corporal one time asking me, we're sitting in the middle of the project surrounded by, just poor living conditions, just not nice. And he's like, so James, are you glad you became a cop? And I just turned and I looked at him and I said, Ray, I wish I had never left the Park Service.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's how I felt about it. So anyhow, I left, I quit police work. I moved to California. I worked for about a year living with a friend of mine from college, and got into Cal State Hayward for my master's program in geography. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention, I did finish up my degree as a guest matriculate while I was a cop.
Wow.
See, I'm not stupid. I didn't just leave school. I actually took a leave of absence. I did it officially. So,
Well,
and they
good.
allowed me to do that. Yeah, so fortunately, Cal State Hayward had this wonderful geography department chair named Herb Eder. And Dr. Eder was one of those guys who was a firm believer in second chances. And he saw my grades, which had tanked. I mean, I graduated with a 2.04 because
Oh,
when your dad dies, when you're 21 years old, it kind of mentally messes with you.
Oh yeah.
So, and
yeah.
so did ROTC at the time. So he let me in, and I did well enough that I got admitted when I applied to PhD programs. Of the 4 programs I applied to, I got into all except for the worst one in the nation,
Oh, wow.
which I thought was funny.
That's ironic.
Yeah, so I got in. Well, it was really hilarious. I got into a top 10 program, into a top 25 program, but the bottom 1 program rejected me. So I moved up here to Washington. Actually, before I even got admitted, because while I was at my best friend's wedding in Texas, I kind of met a girl, like in the wedding party, because I was the best man and she was the maid of honor. And she caught the bouquet, and my mother pushed her to catch the bouquet, and I fled from the room when they were tossing the garter because I was like, single. I'm single. No kids. Single. Don't like kids. So we're about to celebrate our 27th anniversary this month.
Oh, wow.
Next week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, it's not always been easy, but it's there. We have 2 kids. My oldest is a EMT just starting. She is trying to figure out life. She takes after her father, unfortunately. I wish she took after her mother, but my wife had it figured out. 18, go to college. After college, go to medical school. After medical school, well, spend 4 years in the military and get PTSD, and then move on from there to family practice. So,
Wow.
anyhow, youngest daughter just graduated from DigiPen Institute of Technology, which is the world's best school if you want to go into game development. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's just a phenomenal
You
school.
would have heard of it before I would have.
Yes. I started a bachelor's in game design and development, and then realized my passion was more into the books and the technical writing side, and kind of there. And similar to you, sir, it took a cancer scare to remind me that I kind of wish I had finished or explored that book idea I had back in high school and circled back that way. So I feel that big time. And it's crazy that sometimes life throws us curveballs like that to make us stop and take a breath and reevaluate who we want to be, as Erica puts it, when we grow up, at any given stage of our lives. So I resonate very with that.
Yeah, unfortunately, too many people are just too busy chasing a buck to think about what really matters. And I was probably one of those, and it was just a wake-up call.
Well, and we're, as a society, it's actually interesting because having done HR, and then after this we'll take a quick break and come back, but having done HR for so long, I talked to high school students and college students and volunteered at those all the time. And you're told, get a good job, have it make lots of money. Like, you're not told to chase your passion. You're also not taught necessarily, unless your parents do it, because schools don't do it, that if you buy stuff, like you want that car, that's great, except for now you're beholden to that car. So if you do want to, like, you get a high paying job, if you do want to change what you're doing when you want to grow up again, right? It's not easy, because most of the time you have to start again at the bottom, right? But you've made bills, house bills, car bills, whatever bills, up to this level. So you're stuck. So I always tell people, I'm like, get a cheap car if you need a car. Don't go buy the biggest house in the world, and find a way so that if you do decide you hate what you're doing, then you can do something else, that. And I think that we don't teach kids enough that. Like, they think they have to go out and get this job and get this whole thing, and it's really cool, I want to have this new car, but all of a sudden your car lease is $700 a month, so now you have a car that you have to pay for all the time, and now you have to have a job to pay for that car, and then pay for that insurance, and then pay for that house, and pay for all these electronics that you have, and blah blah blah, and it just, like, it spirals so quickly. So I go ahead.
I agree with you 100%, so much that with my kids growing up, I've always told them, don't buy anything that you don't need. Don't buy a house that you can afford. Buy a house that will fit your needs. Their fortune is that their grandmother recently passed away and left them each with a sizable chunk of change that when they turn 30, they'll get it. And they can actually draw on part of it now because it's in a trust. And my oldest actually called up the people today, now that she's actually working again. And she says, yeah, don't send me money. Just leave it there.
Smart.
Oh, very smart. So you did the right thing.
Moment, I'm sure.
You keep saying Scotch, and all I hear in my mind is Ron Burgundy going, Scotch. Room
it's the nectar
like
of the gods.
Leather-bound books and rich mahogany. Okay. So
as long as you don't add in the cigar smoke.
I do love a good cigar, though. Okay, but let's talk a little bit about. So you decided to self-publish, right? Versus control, and I think self-publishing is absolutely for some people. But you just have to be willing to do all this stuff. And a lot of people who, as a control freak myself, I understand this. When you're a control freak, you have to be willing. You have to go, I don't want to leave anything in anyone else's hands, because it can be more frustrating, regardless of profit amount, doing that if you want to control everything. But what was the first thing that kind of shocked you when you went, that's it, I'm going to go do self-publishing? Like, what surprised you that you weren't anticipating?
Everything.
It all hit him out of the left field.
Well, when you don't know anything, you don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I had already gotten an editor, and she was a copy editor. I'd already been through beta readers who had helped me winnow my book from 126 to 102,000 words. I still miss some of those parts, though. I like those parts. But it was, cover design, formatting your books, trying to get it out there, getting those first reviews. Where do you advertise? How do you connect with people that want to read your book? And I've come up with the kind of philosophy is that I write in a kind of specialized genre, parallel worlds, alternative history. There are not a whole lot of authors writing that kind of work, but you have a fan base. If I can tell you right now, my fan base, if they knew about me, would be like those who read S.M. Sterling, his Conquistadors, Lights of Fire, or, Island in the Sea of Time series. John Ringo with the 1632 series. If they like Harry Turtledove, H. Beam Piper, and there's an author out there, S.M. Anderson now, who's written something similar.
See, a lot of these people you mentioned have been on our show, so we know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, I was like, and they were on, and they were on, and they were on. So.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, and like even a friend of mine, Kevin Eikenberry, has just published one of the parts of the 1632 series. He did a book called The Crossing. So here's a plug for Kevin. But yeah, it was like all of these things. Cover design. Who knew that much went into cover design? And that,
and it
and it's like,
so much weight on how successful you are on certain vendor sites. It's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's so nuts.
But my first cover, I had my daughter actually do the rough draft on it because this was before she started her getting her BFA in digital art and animation at DigiPen. And so I sent it up to the artist in Vancouver, BC, and I didn't realize how expensive that was. And that was clearly at the very early beginning stages of my learning curve, because I paid over $2,000 for the artwork, which,
hold on, I have
as an indie,
that's a lot. Oh my God. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Remember, learning curve. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up my cover.
Please do.
It's a piece of art that you have the full rights on. It can skyrocket.
Yeah. Let's do the review.
I don't have the full rights. I only have the rights for publishing the books and for marketing, posters and things like that. So I can't put it on cups or mugs. So this is the original one.
Oh wow.
Remember the theme of the Core of Discovery and Lewis and Clark?
Yeah.
If you've ever been out west and you've seen the trail signs, I want you to look at the drawing of the two protagonists here. It's based on those signs.
Very cool.
So, and this is the last one I have of this copy, and somebody actually ordered it. I'm just waiting for the money to come in before I send it to them. Mm-hmm. But that, I was like, I can't afford that kind of money for every one of these books. And so I started looking around. I found another artist in South Africa, and she did the work, but it was like, it's okay, but I don't really, really like it that much. It looks kind of cartoonishy and campy. And I mean, for what I paid, it was inexpensive, and she did okay work. It wasn't where I wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. And I have one buried here. I'm not going to pull it up because let's just say that I like her. I like her work. I like how fast she got things done, but I'm happier with the newer covers, just because I have a new artist. But so that was the big one.
What is
what's that?
Where's the new one? We need both. I mean, if you're sharing.
We want it.
YouTube episode.
We like it when people share. This is the advantage of those who are watching us on YouTube. They get to see all the things.
Yes, done, including boxes stacked up in our office.
Real quick. This is the cover for the third book that was originally done by the second artist.
Okay.
Compared to the next one.
Oh my
Oh,
God, that's so
yeah.
much better.
Yes. A little more depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This one was acceptable. I mean, it had everything I wanted on it, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be exactly. And I felt that the artist probably couldn't expand beyond that. And so when I found out about this author, Keith Draws, by the way, is his nom de art, I guess. I love his work because Keith will read the book and he'll say, is this, what kind of cover do I think should be on here? And he came to the same conclusion I did, is that having the flying car shooting at the German freighter was the best cover,
That's
concept.
awesome.
So, but bear with me for a second because they're all buried here.
That's okay. It's your podcast.
Okay. We will wait for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we do here.
All righty.
Authors.
Yes.
Here we
Okay.
go. The new Surveyor cover.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
So
That's
you've got
awesome.
the Smilodons, the plane crash, all that fun stuff in there.
Yeah.
So I love this cover, clearly. And the follow-up one, I don't have the original because I've sold out of all of those, but this was the second in the series.
Ooh.
Nice.
I like it.
So yeah, that's I love his artwork, and I will continue to use Keith. He is far less expensive than the first artist, but twice as much as the second. But I like the work.
Well,
But yeah, so
to Val's point, a cover sells a book, like that's just the truth. You have to have good covers on your books.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you can't judge a book by its cover, but they do.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
Marketing says otherwise.
Yeah. So that was my biggest learning curve on that one, and trying to find that price point that is you're still making a profit.
Mhm.
And this is not a full-time job for me. I mean, I have a full-time job. I do financial crime investigations as my own self-employed forensic accountant.
So
So
what is that like? Because you have the word forensic, so everybody automatically, I think, goes to CSI, like Law and Order, with things. But that's not quite what forensic accountants do. So, what does a forensic accountant do?
well, we don't see Marge Helgenberger, the redhead from.
Yeah.
So, but forensic just means for the court. That's all it really means. So anytime that somebody throws out the word forensic, it means that their work could actually be used in litigation, either in a civil or a criminal trial. So the kind of accounting I do is a little different than most. When most people think of accounting, the way I like to describe it is there are three things. You have an accountant, you have a bookkeeper, an accountant, and an auditor, and then to follow them all up, a fraud examiner. And I am a certified fraud examiner. But the bookkeeper just enters stuff into the books. They maintain the double entry book so that everything's there. The purpose of the accountant is to understand the laws as they relate to accounting and be able to apply them in the bookkeeping and to ensure that the records are maintained properly. The role of the auditor is to go in and review things to make sure things are being done properly. For an example, let's say you're working in a factory, the accountant will say, oh yeah, we got 1,200 widgets in. Well, the auditor will go out and say, okay, do we have 1,200 widgets? 1, 2, 3. So that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do we have 1,200 boxes of widgets? Yes, we do. And they'll report that back to the accountant or whomever they're reporting to. And an auditor is an accountant too. They just specialize in performing these kinds of functions, auditing. And then you have people like me who will go in and say, okay, good. Auditor says you have 1,200 boxes of widgets. The books say you have 1,200 boxes of widgets. Are there really widgets in all those boxes? Let's go check. And so we start looking at the boxes. Oh, why is this box empty? And so in a way, that's what I do a lot of, but I don't go out there and physically check stuff like that. Instead, most of my work is related to financial matters. I do a lot of high conflict divorce cases where men and women are getting divorced. We all know, marriage is an economic function. It is not and it never has been one of pure love and lust and all that fun stuff, because once you get married, you're economically tied together. And that's how it's been for centuries. Well, sometimes some people don't want to share everything. So they want to kind of like hide stuff so that the other person doesn't know they exist. And so my job is to ferret out, number one, did they have the money? Number two, where did it go? And so that's what I get doing on those kinds of cases, where I wind up helping, in most cases, women who would otherwise be screwed out of getting what is financially theirs. For example, I'm working a case right now where the husband's like, oh, I only have $2,000 worth of gold, but she's got a receipt from years ago and pictures. And I'm like, no, you got $7,000 worth of gold there. But on the flip side, her father was saying, oh, we put his money into this money market account and it's worth this much. And I'm like, no, you put it into an index fund and it's worth this much. So that's where I come in. And people will use me for mediation. I have been hired to conduct financial crime investigations on small businesses, municipalities. Actually, one of my most favorite cases, and I love this one, is a buddy of mine was hired to investigate a city manager of a small town in eastern Washington called Sela, which, interestingly enough, is where all of these books originate, is in Sela. For a reason. I love the little town. But the city manager was accused of embezzling some funds. New mayor was hired, so they brought us in. And because my friend, who was a CFE, didn't have the accounting education that I have, brought me in. So we go there and we listen, and we're like, okay, you're talking $24,000. How many years ago? 10, 12 years ago? The odds of us finding anything are pretty slim. But this whole thing about him destroying records, now that's a different matter altogether. And so our investigation morphed from $24,000 was missing 7 or 10 years ago to a document destruction case, which in Washington state, if you destroy a public document that should not be destroyed, that's a felony.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And this includes emails. So, but the flip side on that is when you're talking about emails, you say, well, if this was part of an email conversation, is there anybody else in the organization that has a copy of this email? And the answer is yes, then it's not destroyed, is it?
Oh, that's true.
So we brought in a digital forensics expert, for the court, Gordon, and Gordon got in there with his little fancy, whatever he does is digital voodoo, as I call it, and just started finding stuff. And I went through all the emails, and it was rather interesting is that their email server had a 24-hour turnover. So it had 3 servers. They were all set for Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC. And what would happen is on day one, whatever you entered was in the computer. If next day and 24 hours later, all that stuff would transfer to the second server. So any changes you made the second day were not recognized in the second server, but were in the first. And it would continue to the third, where all that stuff that was 3 days old is now on server number 3. The 2-day-old stuff is on server number 2, and the new stuff is on server number 1.
That's weird.
Well, the city manager asked the IT tech guy, oh, I need to wipe my files to get rid of everything. And the IT guy was like saying to himself, not to the manager, I don't think that's really right. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to make a copy of it. He never told the guy.
Oh, wow.
So he did. And when the guy left, after he was kicked out as the city manager from the new mayor, and the detective found out what happened, he immediately got a search warrant, saved the records. This guy made the case. But then I got to wade through 9,000 emails. And you have no idea how boring that is.
I just had to go through 286 yesterday, so I feel you.
9,000.
9,000. So you won that award.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went through all of those, and I went through whatever else we had, and we came up with a certain number of documents that we identified as missing. Oh, by the way, his quote unquote laptop from his office was stolen. Keep that in mind.
I'm doing quotation marks for you. Stolen.
Thank you. I'll do my little mini quotes.
Yeah.
So we managed to get a search warrant for his house now because we identified all these documents that should be on his flash drive that he should be in possession of because it's a personal flash drive. So the very night that this guy is just offered a brand new position as city manager for a small town, and he comes home and there's the police waiting for him. And they came out with the flash drives that we wanted. They came out with a laptop that had been stolen and a case of documents that were city documents.
Oh,
Oh,
shit.
wow. Not good.
So once again, Rich calls me, the detective. He's like, hey, James, can you come on in and take a look at these documents? And he knows that I live on the other side of the mountain, so it's like a 2-hour drive for me.
Oh, wow.
But luckily, I was on my way to the Tri-Cities, which is Kennewick area, to have a debate with the local sheriff, and actually it turned out to be his head of patrol, on legalizing marijuana, because I was a firm proponent of ending the war on drugs, having been a cop, and seeing that people who are high do not get into domestic violence cases, unlike people who are alcoholics. So,
Very true.
by the way, I drink alcohol. I don't do marijuana. So
Hey.
just to make that clear, I can't stand the smell.
Well, that's why there are gummies. Whoop, whoop, gummies. I know
Okay, I
nothing
almost
about
snorted
that.
Lafroy got my nose on that one. So anyhow, I swung by it, and oh yeah, this one's a city document. This one's a city document. This one's a city document. So we came up with, eventually I want to say it was 42 digital documents, 200 paper documents, and 152 emails out of 9,000 that were destroyed improperly. Each one of those is a count. Each one of those is a Class B felony, which is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The guy served 3 days.
That's a really long time.
3 days. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, the one thing I have to say about some of these laws, and then we're going to get back to talking about writing because I don't want to use your entire podcast to talk about your other jobs. But one thing that I really hate as somebody who is researches a lot of true crime, I write about serial killers and stuff like that. Like I write horror stories. Is it mortifies me the prison sentences for certain things, and then people can kill someone and they get 3 to 5 years.
Or they could rip somebody off for millions of dollars and get off of a day or a couple of months. Yeah,
Exactly.
our laws are kind of wacky.
It's wild.
Well, that's why I guess some of my thoughts on government come out in my books, although not completely, because it is speculative fiction. And, it's kind of funny where people will slam me for being /far-right libertarian fantasy. And I'm like, do you understand the difference between far-right and libertarian? It's like saying far-left and libertarian. It's the same thing. So, but but the upshot on that case was, it was only the 3rd time in state history anybody got a felony conviction on document destruction. So I'm proud of that case.
As you should be, my friend.
As you should be after 9,000 emails.
Thank you.
Exactly.
9,000.
So
that's not the same as going through 125,000. Okay, we're back to writing.
Oh my God.
See, this is what happens when I drink.
Back to writing. Let's talk about let's drink and talk about writing. So let's talk about your fans. So what was it like when you posted the book up? What was it like getting your first real review from somebody that you didn't know?
Oh, it's exciting as all get out, except for the 1-star review. But then I laugh about that one. No, it really is. Anytime somebody leaves a review, especially if it's a good one, and especially if you're compared to Heinlein or Del Rey or, S.M. Sterling, it blows you away. You're like, wow. The fact is, I got nominated for the Prometheus Award this year. Do you know who's been nominated for that thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kurt Vonnegut, S.M. Sterling, Heinlein, John Ringo. It's like this endless list of greats. And I'm like, what? You just can't believe it because you're like, I'm just like a little tiny writer here, just like a little brain thing coming out and just vomiting onto my Scrivener. So to actually be nominated for something like that and to have a review where you're compared to somebody that you admire.
Yeah.
As a writer, as a storyteller, actually. I don't like to be called a writer. I like to be called a storyteller because I'm telling a story. As one of my reviewers say is, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
True.
which, you know how some of those books are, they jump into the action. It's just action, 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 action. By halfway through, you're just exhausted. My books don't leave you that way, but some people will find them slow because they're written in the kind of, this is a story, this is life,
Yeah.
and I'm developing my characters to people you either like or don't like, and of course my characters are, all my protagonists are just totally awesome people, because of course they are,
You have a great story and you have to share it.
Yeah, but the funny thing is they
that.
also have,
I was gonna say, we talk about that all the time, that don't worry whether or not your readers are going to like or dislike the story that you want to tell, right? Because let's take Tolkien. Everyone knows Lord of the Rings. It's all over the place, but you either love it or you hate it when you read it. Either you see this grand adventure and you're so about it, or you just like, would he stop? There's so much walking and so many trees. Like, it's all in the type of reader you are. And I think a lot of authors will create a writer's block almost in themselves, fretting over, well, what if the reader doesn't like what I'm doing or how I'm telling a story? Don't worry about that, baby. You write and tell your story the way that it feels right, and then you will find the readers, and the readers will find you with the right assistance. If you have to, get a marketing consultation and things like that, there's so much you can do in the aftermath, but don't derail your efforts. You said you just
write to an audience that you think exists. Write your stuff and find your audience.
Yes.
Well, that's exactly my philosophy.
Whatever that was, Erica.
You're welcome, Val.
Drunk Erica.
Yeah, that's literally my writing is, I write the stories I like. And put it bluntly, I read my own work. Like after a year of publishing, I'll just sit down with the books and go through them. And and that's when you find all the typos and everything like that still snuck through. But yeah, I mean, I think they're a good story, and that's why I write them, and that's why I like them. And if other people don't,
well, you're never going to please everybody. I'm very proud of my 1-star review, by the way. It makes me laugh all the time. So on one of the books, I think it's hysterical. Because people aren't going to like it, but they bought my book, so go team. Amazon verified.
Exactly, I made money.
You gave me money. Thank you. You can say whatever you want. What about have you been able to meet fans in person? Have you done events where you've gone and signed books?
I have done events. I presume you guys are familiar with the whole 20 books to 50K group on Facebook?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And they have a conference every November in Las Vegas.
Correct.
And it's 20 Books Vegas. Well, I've been there and I've sold the books there at the table there, where I haven't met any fans because, to put it bluntly, I'm so new, people don't know me. And I've met future fans, as I call them. And I've handed out my books to other people, and they're like other authors, and they come back and they're like, oh, hey, this is good. I like this. So it's always nice. But I actually, because I've got my blog up, jamespeet.com, people have contacted me that way. As a matter of fact, one reader who just ordered 4 books, hard copy, so for her husband and her, asked me, can you write out the recipe for this stew that sounded so good? And so I wrote it out on the blog.
Yes. Fan interaction, and that's what a blog and newsletter comes in, right? Like, it's sort of, when you're not able to go to events, it's the next best thing for a reader to be able to reach out and being able to communicate with them and get that instant feedback or more intimate feedback with them. It is so cool, because every once in a while, with mine, they'll be like, dude, this, like, I just finished X book and you totally put the Polish fairy tale in there of this XYZ. She's like, why didn't you mention it? Because I try to mention, you can find nuggets of research within the fictional world. And I'm like, well, I didn't think anyone would know that story. Like, it's so old and it took me forever to find it. So it's kind of reassuring sometimes that I have found my audience, and my audience has found me when I get stuff like that they resonate well enough. And I think that's cool that they reached out and wanted a recipe from your story. That's pretty cool.
That was one of my funner ones. Yeah. So, it's like we were doing an email exchange and I'm just writing it down as we're doing this. So I just, well, I also have a cookbook out. So matter of fact, okay.
Oh my goodness, we have a cookbook author. There we
Look
go.
out. There we go.
All right. Now, long story short, because I'm very good at this, not really. 7 years ago, my wife was involved in a really bad accident where a Douglas fir tree slammed down on her car. And we're talking over 4 feet wide.
Holy
Yikes.
Left her with 19 broken bones, left my daughter with a ruptured spine and ruptured intestines, and left my other daughter with a little glass scratch above her eye. I mean, it
Oh
was
my
just like this
goodness.
total, she was in the ICU for 2 weeks, the ACU for another week, assisted living for 4 months. And when she came home, in her wheelchair with both of her arms in a cast, I was like, hey, would you like to watch this movie, The Way? And she's like, what's it about? I said, let's just watch it. And the story is Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez, and father and son, like in real life. But Emilio is killed doing the Camino de Santiago. And his father goes to collect his remains, but instead of going back to California, he has his son cremated and takes the son on the Camino de Santiago. And so, yeah, it's a great movie, The Way. And I love the music, by the way. I have it all loaded up on my iPod. And my wife said, I want to do that. And I said, okay, you have to learn how to walk.
Okay.
And we have a very long porch because I built the house. So she started walking up and down the porch. Then we started walking up and down the driveway. And then we went for longer and longer walks while her right ankle healed. And then in 2018, our nephew in England was getting married, so we flew to England, and we said, hey, let's just take a couple of weeks and do the Camino, because you can do a small portion of it and still get the Compostela. She said, I want to walk across the Pyrenees. And I said, okay. And so, mind you, remember, I switched over in my diet at that point. I am no longer, meat and potatoes, James. I'm now the reluctant vegan.
Okay.
Finding vegan food in Spain is difficult. Here, you want your tuna salad? No, I just want a salad. Okay, here's the tuna salad. You want your vegetable lentils with pork? Just the vegetable lentils. Okay, here's your vegetable lentils with pork. That kind of a thing. Yeah, it made it really interesting. So, fortunately, like I said, I can eat cold water fish, so there was plenty of salmon around that I could eat. So I was like, every day was salmon and lentils and everything like that. But what came about was this book, Camino Eats for the Solo Vegan, which is, as you can see, it's a very thick book. It's actually designed for somebody to take with them on the Camino and provide basically 11 different suppers or entrees, or I don't know what the Europeans call the last meal of the day, but it's not an entree, so that you only repeat your meal, maybe twice during the entire 30-something days that you're walking the Camino. So that's out there, and meat eaters will like it too, because you can throw in dead animal flesh if you're interested.
Oh my goodness.
And occasionally we do.
Wow. You are
But-
you're multifaceted there.
Definitely.
Yeah. So but I have to add this part to the story, which is that my wife and I have both done the full Camino, which is over 500 miles long now, individually. But we've done short Caminos together. And on the first one, we were taking a low route across the Pyrenees, so we didn't realize there was a lot of terrain up and down elevation gain. We got to kilometer 10 and my wife hit a wall, so I had to carry her pack. And when we get to the room where town where the hostel or albergue was, there was this steep ravine we had to go down and all the way back up. And it took my wife a half hour to cover that distance, which is only about 250 meters, a very short distance. I mean, her ankle was that painful.
Oh, wow.
And so we get into the albergue. Unfortunately, there was an ice pack in the freezer, so I slapped it on her ankle. I gave her my ibuprofen. I said, here, take 2 and call me in the morning. There were 4 in there. And so I went and did some other stuff. And I came back, and I'm like, where's the rest of the ibuprofen? Because I needed something. She's like, I took it. I'm like, okay. So the next day, she had been sitting there going, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. I'm like, yeah, you can. And so we took all the heavy items out of her pack, and we loaded me up, and my nickname then became Sherpa. instead of James, or no, I'm not going to say what else she calls me sometimes. And so we got to the top of the Pyrenees, and I've got this great picture of her holding up her hiking poles up in the air. And then we crossed down the Pyrenees, and she collapsed.
Well, hey, you
uh,
got the right picture though, right?
Right.
Exactly. So quite thrilled about that. And so this came out, and it's, oh, by the way, free plug. It's available in electronic format. If you want it, just email me.
Very
No charge.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
guess what, my
It's-
friend? We are near the end of this podcast, which I
No!
feel like we could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but it's shameless self-promotion time for you. How do people find you on social media and your blogs and your books and all that fun stuff?
Okay. Well, I only have one blog. It's jamespeet.com. That's JamesPeet. You know, just like the coffee, Peet's Coffee. Only I'm not related. I wish I had their money, but I don't. So, or you can find me on Facebook, James S. Peet is on Facebook. There's two of them. There's my personal page. Don't send me a friend request, please. I am very closed-mouthed, and other than when I get on a blog like this, I have a very small friends list. Like, I even don't accept friend requests from people I know. So I'm not going to accept it from people I don't know that way. But on my author page, I'm glad to interact with you and everything like that. They can email me by hitting the contact me link on jamespeet.com. We're there. Let's see. I have an Instagram account, I know, but that's for my fraud stuff, and I never pay attention to it, so don't even bother going there. As my wife says, I am a gregarious loner, so I'm just like holed up here on top of my little mountaintop, with my Lafroig and my Johnny Walker and my Coors non-alcoholic. By the way, they have outstanding non-alcoholic beer in Spain. I love it. Nothing like walking 25 or 30 kilometers and having one of those.
Very cool.
So, unfortunately, I don't really have a newsletter yet. I haven't reached that stage because I'm still in the process of a book a year. I'm trying to pump that up, but my work and family and just the fact that I like to travel. I mean, I'm going to New Zealand in 2 weeks for 6 weeks. So,
wow.
Yeah, it kind of takes away from writing. But if you follow me, I do post. I post good recipes on Mastodon, Stu.
Very cool.
Oh, I saw the pupper.
Yeah, I was going to say the puppy came in stretched for you for that. Looks like a demon puppy with a reflection in the eyes. Well, James,
that's okay.
Fantastic. Go ahead.
What's that?
I was going
to say I've just got a couple of Labradors, so dogs. I love dogs.
Mine are English Shepherds, puppies.
Oh, okay.
So
I just see a white and black blob.
Yeah, he looks like a cow, but he's an English Shepherd. So, but it has been fantastic having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel honored. I mean, to be with all those other greats. But I'm not a great yet. But I will be, because I want your fans to download all my books and give me great reviews. I have a saying, which is, if you don't like my book, just leave a 4-star and a good review.
I love it.
If you really don't like it, leave 5 stars and a great review.
There you go. Perfect. Guys, this has been Drinking with Authors. I've been the host, Erica Lance. I remembered my name. My co-host today has been Valerie Willis.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hope to see you on the flip side.
And we will see you guys next time.